I rang the British Museum to see if there was someone there who could tell me about Vikings, and they said that their Viking expert was currently working on a dig here in this town of Tutsbury. So let's see if we can find him.
Hello, Albert.
So, Gareth, tell us about what you do.
Well, I'm a curator at the British Museum, and I'm responsible particularly for coins from the Anglo-Saxon and Viking period,
Okay.
but I'm interested in all sorts of other finds from that period as well.
So when did the Viking era start?
It depends on exactly how you count it, but normally in Britain we take it as dating just before 800. There's two separate events, either of which might be the first recorded Viking raid.
One of these events, would that be some like longboat arriving and a bunch of fellas jumping out and kind of raping and pillaging?
That's the sort of thing. Probably not much rape on the first one because they attacked a monastery.
Okay. More pillage.
More pillage, yeah.
Okay.
No one had ever done anything like that, attacking a monastery, because monasteries were seen by the Christians as absolutely sacred. You don't attack them.
Okay.
But the Vikings weren't worried about that because they weren't Christian.
Are we talking large numbers of Vikings?
No, we're not.
Is it called, if you've got more than a couple of boatfuls, it's called a hare, is it? Or a heer? How do you say that?
A herra.
A herra.
And this is something which in the Anglo-Saxon law codes about a century earlier, they distinguished between up to 7 people, between 7 and 35 people.
They're thieves.
Yeah, exactly. And above 35...
that'd be a band.
Above 35, that's your herra.
That's the hera. Above 35.
Yeah, so you have thieves, then you have a band, and then you have
These days
a
it'd be
herra.
called a big band, or something like that. Anyway, how does it
That's
translate?
slightly different. Well, that's a good question, because it's often translated as an army, but it's probably
35's a kind of an optimistic sort of army, isn't it?
And it's more to do with the nature. It's not that they're a proper army. It's they're a big raiding party.
When you said the Danish army camped in the field nearby here, what are we talking about there? Is that a grand big band?
I think we're talking hundreds,
Not
very
thousands.
very possibly over 1,000. Probably not more than a couple of thousand.
What are they able to do with that many? Are they able to sort of conquer England with that many?
Well, firstly, there's no such thing as England until after the Vikings.
Okay.
There's a whole series of smaller kingdoms, and there are 4 big kingdoms. So you've got those 4 great kingdoms which have swallowed up smaller kingdoms between them, and that's the situation when the Vikings arrived.
Okay.
Now, when they first arrived, with these 3 or 4 boatloads at a time, what they're doing is raiding, taking what they can get, and going home with it.
Okay, they were a bunch of troublemakers. They weren't interested in taking over the
No,
political
that's
system.
right. The early raiders, they're interested in getting wealth and power at home.
Oh yeah.
And so what they wanted was wealth that they could take home with them, and either buy lands or just show what important people that they were.
So from raiding to something more, how does that happen?
Well,
Gareth?
they start stopping over the winter, and then they stop 2 winters, 3 winters, until there's an almost permanent presence, and they never really go away.
Did they used to skin Danes and nail them to the doors?
There's a tradition that's the case. And
that seems fairly harsh.
It's also almost certainly a 19th century invention. We don't actually know of any genuine evidence for this. There's one church in Essex where they've still got a piece of skin nailed to the door, which it's always been said this is where one of the Vikings was nailed to the door, and that was analysed.
Seems like evidence, doesn't it?
Except that they looked at it recently and it's cow skin.
Oh,
It's not impossible, because
they certainly would have been grumpy about the Vikings.
They were pretty brutal times.
We have Vikings over just about everywhere except Wessex now.
Yeah, and they make a treaty, the Treaty of Wedmore, which basically divided England into 2. And it's more or less along the lines of the modern A5.
Well, I'd heard that the A5 was built by Romans. Was that true?
That's right, and the road was already there, and that's why it was a convenient boundary for part of it.
Okay. It hasn't really been repaired since.
Well, they seem to be repairing it all the time. After the treaty that he'd made with Guthrum at Wedmore in 878, there was basically the area under English control and the area under Viking control.
The area under Viking control, yes. What did they call that?
That was called the Dane Law.
The Dane Law, not the Viking Law.
No, the Dane Law.
Okay.
The term Viking, although we use it today, wasn't used that much in this period. They tended to talk about all the people either as Danes, whether they came from Denmark or Norway, it didn't matter, or as heathens, and sometimes as both. Right. Viking is occasionally used, and it literally means just pirate or raider.
So where we're standing now, was this part of the Dane?
Yes. This is not one of the highest sort of concentrations of Danish settlement, but basically most of northern and eastern England was conquered by the Vikings. And what happens is that Alfred and his successors gradually conquer that back. The Vikings hung around in Yorkshire the longest, and the Viking kingdom based on York survived until 954, when the last Viking king, Eric Bloodaxe, was killed.
Eric Bloodaxe. What a fine name.
It's a fantastic name.
The end of the Viking era in England happens when? When York finally finishes?
That's the end of the first Viking era, but there's then a second.
But let's go for a wander around the castle before we talk about the next Viking era.